Hello everyone, please welcome on stage Sarah Morgan Paul.
That's a lovely, warm Manchester welcome, fantastic. Thank you very much, thank you very much. Here I am, the woman dressed as a tampon. Yes. To be honest, last week I was a whopper. Not a fat bastard or anything, no. I was a cheese whopper outside Bad Boy Burgers, doing a bit of marketing for them. Prior to that, I was a chicken nugget outside Chunky's Chicken Joint. And before that, I did a little bit of undercover work. I was a roll of underlay outside Carpet World. I'm building you nicely. We'll be talking about anal sex and knobs in 10 minutes. I'm going to just glide you in. People are running for the door already. So, the agency said to me, Sarah, can you go to Manchester? Can you go to Manchester and dress as a tampon? I said, I'll feel a clot. She said, look, she says, you better soak up the atmosphere. I said, well, listen, if there's no strings attached, I'll give it a go. So here I am. Right, ladies and gentlemen, big question for you then. When was the tampon first invented?
1960.
1960, good guess. Way out. 1930? Any more?
1920.
Believe it or not, 3,000 years BC, the Egyptians used to use a little bit of wood with a bit of lint wrapped round. Gives a whole new meaning to the word sticking it up, yeah. In the 5th century, the Romans used to use a little bit of wool. Unlike some cultures, they removed the sheep first. And more recently, the Americans use a mummified hot dog. I'm only kidding. You never know though, do you, in the deep south, quite well. But did you know, ladies, that 80% of your tampons are made from recyclable material? As some of you sit there tonight, you've got a couple of plastic bottles, half a car tyre, and a bit of old carpet up there. It's like having your own clean recycled bin, really, isn't it? It's like you wouldn't want the council messing with you, would you? You know what I mean? Truck comes down, leaves it 4 inches up. What they're doing Leeds, anyway. But did you know that the most recyclable tampon of them all is the sea sponge? Obviously not. The sea sponge, you'll never look at SpongeBob and Patrick in the same light ever again, will you? The sea sponge, if washed regularly, can be used up to 6 months. They trialled it in Yorkshire, you know where I come from. Didn't go down very well, quite honestly. I think it was the regular washing in some parts of the county that... Go on, have you ever been to Hull? Have you ever been to Hull? European City of Culture this year is Hull. You won't even put it in the same sentence, would you? No, have you ever been to Hull? I've been to the deep. Have you been to the deep? Discover an underwater world. I don't consider 3 starfish, a mouldy flip-flop, a barnacle-covered Wellington and a mackerel staring back at me, discovering an underwater world. But no, honestly, on a Saturday in Hull, they go into town in the best onesies and pyjamas. You've seen them? And they head down to Pound World to buy their own teeth. And that's just the staff who work there. No, honestly, giving Hull the title of European City of Culture is a bit like giving somebody a pat on the back because they've had a shit in the street. But they wipe themselves after. But anyway, I'm drifting. So, you might think then, when was the tampon, as we know it today, this lovely little cotton bud here, when was this first invented? Well, that was invented in 1929, when an American lady was having afternoon tea with a friend, Dr. Earl Haas. And as the conversation can very often go over an Earl Grey and a Victoria sponge, they started to talk about periods. And I'd imagine it went something like this. Why, Dr. Haas, will you be joining me for afternoon tea today? Why, Miss Turnbull, nothing would give me greater pleasure than to join you for afternoon tea. And perhaps we may take a turn around the room later. Why, Dr. Hess, I don't know whether I will be able to, for my monthly visitor, my lady in red, has come to call. As they say, two's company, three's a crowd, Miss Turnbull. Will it prevent you from arising from your chair? Why, ordinarily, Dr. Hess, it may do. But this month I have popped some sponge on the inside, as opposed to letting my monthly visitor, my lady in red, fall upon a cotton blanket on the outside. It's pure genius. It's genius, and it's an idea that I'm going to take and I'm going to make a hell of a lot of money with. And of course, give women around the world freedom. And so, in 1929, I was born. Not bad for the age, Emma. Not bad for the age at all. So, but actually, fascinatingly enough, it was actually an immigrant called Gertrude Tendridge who set up the first mass-producing tampon factory. Quite ironic, isn't it? As a country, we're trying to stem the flow of immigrants, and it was actually an immigrant who initially stemmed the flow at all. So you never knock new blood in a country, that's what I say. And so you might say, Sarah, when were you first introduced to the tampon? I bet it was at your sex education class, wasn't it? Well, I'd like to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, there was absolutely no mention of tampons at my sex education class. In fact, to be honest, there was barely a mention of sex education at my sex education class. But then again, it was the 70s, a time of free love flares and the wombles. Underground, overground, wombling free. The wombles of Wimbledon coming our way. Oh, it's like off my bucket list now. Right. No, the wombles, very influential on my childhood, the wombles. Very influential. Because you know what it's like at school? It's all about being cool, isn't it? All about being cool. It's all about having the right hairdo, wearing the right clothes, having the right gear, isn't it? And you may be surprised to know that as I stand here tonight as a 50-year-old woman dressed as a tampon, I wasn't particularly very cool at school. Oh, big shock that one, Sarah. We thought you were leader of the gang of that one, yeah? And it is, and it's like all my friends, they like be listening to David Bowie or the Pretenders, do you know what I mean? And it was all like, oh, Spandau Ballet. My first single I ever bought was Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep. And the first album I ever bought was the Womble's Greatest Hits. While all my friends can't decide between Lennon and McCartney, who's the better, Jagger or Richards, I still can't decide between Orinoco and Uncle Bulgaria. But I don't care, because the fun I've had running around my settee to underground, overground, wombling free. And that was just the other week. But, anyway, listen, I'm digressing. So back to sex education then. Because sex education today, very different to back in my day. Very different to back in my day. Let's be honest, today, you only need to watch MTV for 5 minutes to know it all, don't you? You only need to see Miley Cyrus stuck to a wrecking ball and a bit of Nicki Minaj beach twerking to tell you everything you need to know about the Lady Garden. And let's be honest, a quick download of Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian's sexcapades will tell you everything you need to know about Adam and Eve. Though to be honest, I don't think Adam and Eve could get into some of those positions. But it's right, it's a different world today. And do you know who I blame for this different world that we have today? Anne bloody Summers. No, it's Anne Summers' fault. We were happy, back in the day, having Tupperware parties, before she started throwing her sex toys into the front room. Now, I have to be honest, I did this show in Edinburgh recently, and when I mentioned a Tupperware party, they looked at me like, oh, what's going on? Does anybody know what a Tupperware party is? Yeah! There's a few hands up, a few people know. Few people know, not admitting it. Well, for those who are too embarrassed to ask, I'm going to tell you what a Tupperware party was, right? Basically, you'd invite your friends round to your front room, and you'd do those little cheese and pineapple things on cocktail sticks, didn't you? If they were lucky, they got a sausage. And you'd invite them round, and you'd spend the evening looking at plastic containers. You can see why drugs took off at 80s, can't you? Honest to God. Woo, look at the sandwich box. Suddenly, it's not a metaphor. Suddenly, we're swapping sandwich boxes, aren't we, for rampant rabbits? I mean, it's got its disadvantages those sandwich boxes can nip. No, suddenly, all your friends from work around, aren't they? Your boss has got some gimp mask on, rampant rabbit on the end of her nose. You're swapping lube tips with your friends, aren't you? Oh, can I put it on my ass? You can try that. Honest to God, it's too much information. I've never swapped my chair since in the office. But no, it is a different world. It's a different world. Because back in my day, when you went to a private shop, because that's what we used to call sex shops, wasn't it? Private shop. When you went to a private shop back in my day, you'd shuffle, not that I'd know, just from what I've heard, you'd shuffle along, wouldn't you, with your overcoat collar pulled up, hat pulled down. You know what I mean, don't you? Little brown paper bag, wouldn't you? You'd be shuffling along like this. Nowadays, we come out of our summers, don't we? We're swinging as rampant rabbits outside Primark. Oh, look at the big boy. Next minute, we're outside Marks and Spencer's, swapping flavoured condoms, aren't we? Lime and lemon. Ooh, tarty. It's a different world, isn't it? It's a different world. It's like television adverts. They've gone downhill since my day. Back in my day, we had some lovely little adverts. There was the Dulux dog. You remember the Dulux dog?
Yeah.
Andrex dog?
Yeah.
Anything with a dog works for me, I'm telling you honestly. PG tips?
Yeah.
Hey, it's going back some minute, that, eh? Yeah. You know the piano's on my foot, Dad? You have it, no play. Smash. You remember Smash? Yeah. Smash, man, smash. Nowadays, I can't sit and have my tea on a night without some advert coming over my box, my skybox, for Anusol, Vagisil, or ladies. Honest to God, the other night, I'm sat having a pot noodle whilst watching Dog the Bounty Hunter. Oh, you're a fan too. I'm having my pot noodle whilst watching Dog the Bounty Hunter. Next minute, do you suffer from bacterial vaginosis? I thought, what? Rewound it. Do you suffer from bacterial vaginosis? I got my words spell out, dirty minge. I thought, no I don't. I come from the posh part of Yorkshire, thank you very much. But it's true, isn't it? It's true. We've become obsessed with down south. I'm not talking about Milton Keynes. I'm talking about the inner workings of the lady garden, aren't we? Eh? Do you suffer from leaks? Do you suffer from flooding? I'm not asking, I'm just listening. Do you suffer from dryness? Do you suffer from itchiness? Patchiness? It's like a bloody deranged weather report, isn't it? I expect to turn on the weather on the BBC in years to come and find the whole of the United Kingdom's been replaced by a giant minge. With some weather reporter giving it, yes, we've got a bit of flooding in the southern regions, a bit of leakage as we move further up, a bit of dryness and patchiness, a bit of itchiness early evening.